Hi, I welcome you towards my presentation entitled Sharing the Responsibility of Elderly, a Case of India. I am Deepak Singhania and I am an MPhil scholar at the Center for Development Studies in Trivandrum city of Kerala state in India. This is a virtual presentation towards the Aging and Society Conference 2011 at University of California, Berkeley. I will try my best to keep this presentation as interesting and as simple as possible. The objective of this presentation and my paper is to critically review the programs and policies for elderly in India in order to assess the social security of this cohort. I will proceed in this presentation with an introduction and then discuss about the characteristics of elderly population in India and how they are placed in terms of their social security. I will then discuss the provisions for social security of elderly and critically review them. And lastly, I will conclude with some remedies. The size and share of old age population is likely to rise not just after 2020 but even beyond 2050. In contrast, the fertility rate is likely to decrease, resulting to lesser of younger population to look after the elderly needs. Also, the life expectancy post 60 years has more than doubled from 9 years in 1970 to 20 years in 2010. As it can be seen here, the share of elderly has increased from 5% in the beginning of the 20th century to about 8% in 2011 and is likely to rise up to 20% by 2050. And this figure shows that fertility rate has reduced by almost 50%, that is from 4.5 in 1980 to below 2.5 in 2011 and is likely to go further below to 2 by 2025. So who are the elderly in India about whom we are discussing? Anybody above 60 years is an elderly and their population has been increasing across different age groups. These figures clearly show that each elderly age group the population share has been increasing. 75% of the elderly population lies in rural area, and this would also be obvious since almost 70% of Indian population belongs to rural area. There are 1028 males per 1000 females. The labor force participation rate, that is LFPR, is as high as 40%. Among the elderly employed population, more than 70% are the self-employed, which shows the dependence of this cohort on self-employment. Regarding aged employment, an elderly in a group discussion in Tamil Nadu in India said that for us there is only one retirement, not from the work but from the world. I will be discussing about the issues surrounding the social security for elderly in India from 4 perspectives, that is family support, formal versus informal sector job, old female versus old male, and health. Family support for elderly has been decreasing since the overall family size has been falling. The reasons for increasing number of nuclear families are as follows. One is migration of working class people for work or students migrating for education. Also, after growing up, sons separate out with their share of land while daughters leave their parents to get married. Even the number of children is lesser now with the decreasing rate of fertility, which reduces the chances of family care for the aging parents. Another important change taking place in India is urbanization, whereby a smaller family is an important feature, not to mention the working females. While comparing between formal and informal sector jobs, it is found that more than 90% of the jobs in India are of informal nature, and about 1/5 of this are not even able to fulfill their basic household needs. Moreover, the problems with informal sector are that they lack the social security benefits like medical insurance, pensions, savings, etc. And another problem is that in certain events of life, the savings are drained out. It has also been found that the older females are more vulnerable than their male counterparts. The reason being as follows. There are more widows than widowers, possibly because of longer lifespan of females when they marry men of more age, and widowhood means more vulnerability. Also, older women have lifespan by 2 years longer than older males. Another point is that older women are likely to live alone and they are more disadvantaged in terms of inherited wealth. In terms of health, it will be obvious that older people are likely to suffer more from chronic diseases than the younger ones. Data says that 1 out of 2 elderly in India suffers from chronic diseases requiring long life treatment. Moreover, health expenditure is more on elderly and relatively higher for the elderly poor. Now, another important point is that second demographic dividend depends on healthy elderly people, since there are greater incentives to invest in human capital, which leads to savings for old age and also increases longevity. I will next discuss about some social security provisions available for elderly in India. First, I will talk about the pension schemes, then healthcare and insurance, after which I will move on to food and shelter. Then I will take up some government policies followed by legal rights for the elderly. There are various pension schemes for farmer sector and government employees. Two most famous schemes are Employee Provident Fund and Employee Pension Scheme. Both are organized by Employees Provident Fund Organization and are mandatory for firms having 20 or more employees. EPS is based on Defined Benefit Scheme, which according to 5-pillar framework of World Bank is where the financial contribution by an individual is linked to earnings on a pay-as-you-go basis. This scheme was launched in 1995 and has covered more than 20 million persons. Another scheme, that is EPF, is a mix of defined benefits and defined contribution, which links contributions, investment performance, and benefits. This scheme was launched in 1952 and has covered about 25 million people. Basic difference between EPS and EPF is in the way contributions and retirement payments are defined. In order to cover the self-employed and others, the Government of India had introduced Public Provident Fund in 1968-69. One can invest between $27 and about $3,800 in PPP terms for a minimum tenure of 15 years. Another well-known scheme by Government of India is the National Pension Scheme, which was of non-contributory nature, defined benefit before January 2004 and was converted to defined contributory plan after this period. Since 2009, even non-government employees are allowed to opt for the scheme, and in April 2010, another version called NPS Lite has been introduced for economically backward class people. In addition to these schemes, there are a large number of schemes by state governments and also for categories like freedom fighters. One of the well-known pension schemes for informal sector workers is the National Old Age Pension Scheme initiated by the central government. This scheme promises a monthly assistance of about $4 to those aged more than 65 years. The scheme has been renamed as Indira Gandhi National Old Age Pension Scheme in 2007. A scheme launched by Ministry of Labour in 2001 for informal agricultural workers in the age group of 18 to 50 years is Krishi Shramik Samajik Suraksha Yojana. It planned to cover 1 million workers across 50 districts of India in 3 years, but could hardly cover around 1.5% of the planned. Similarly, there are various other pension schemes also by state governments, and the most successful are the welfare funds functioning in Kerala states. There are 3 major channels for healthcare provisions in India: public sector, private sector, and NGOs. And surprisingly, there is no targeted scheme for the elderly. For food security of elderly, Ministry of Rural Development has made provisions for senior citizens above 65 years of age under the scheme called Annapurna Scheme. In terms of housing facilities, agencies like LIC Housing Finance Limited and also some union ministries, state governments, Helpage India, etc. are providing special homes for the elderly. National policy on older persons is one of the government policies focused towards elderly. The nodal ministry being the Minister of Social Justice and Employment. Aim of this policy is to help the individuals to make their own and spouses' old age better. Another policy that came up in March 2007 is the Integrated Program for Older Persons. Its objective is to improve the quality of life of elderly and also to provide support for capacity building for old age support institutions. There are many laws in India that try to ensure social security of elderly from their offsprings. Under such laws, children not taking care of their aged parents have to face penalties. A recent law which is considered stronger and even more favorable for the elderly is Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007. Under this act, Offsprings not just face penalties, but even parents can revoke their will and take back their properties. Social security provisions for elderly in India discussed so far are not free from drawbacks. I will discuss the crucial lacunae in most of these social security provisions one by one. The covering the coverage of working age group people under the formal sector pension scheme is very low. It is even below 10%. Moreover, provident funds are largely used for tax planning and are not utilized for retirement age. Problem with pension schemes is that they are highly fiscal in nature and also non-developmental. The well-celebrated national pension scheme is also fraught with serious problems. As it can be seen in the figure, in a span of more than 1 year, only 0.05% of the working population have joined voluntarily. Also, the auto choice option available, that is, where one can decide the weights of bonds and equities in one's investment, becomes a problem with demographic transition. Pension schemes for informal sector workers face various other sort of problems. One is that it is too poorly managed. Taking the example of NOAP, it can be seen that except in 1997-98, there has always been substantial gap in covering the beneficiaries. Even the allocated funds have not been utilized completely. Not only are the informal sector pension schemes poorly managed, but even the coverage of older women who are comparatively more vulnerable is low. The age limit defined in most of the schemes is also unacceptably high at 65 years instead of 60 years. Additionally, there are issues in identifying the age of a person. The contributory pension schemes seem to be too optimistic in the light of the fact that individuals can hardly take care of their daily needs. As already seen in the previous table, the allocated funds are not being utilized efficiently. Lastly, the amount of pensions has been same for almost a decade. The core problem on health front is that there is no targeted provisions for the elderly. And not only this, whatever health facilities are there, they are in poor shape. There is considerable shortage in the number of healthcare centers required. Also, the different kind of healthcare personnel are not as per the required numbers. Various other problems encompass healthcare facilities in India, like absenteeism of personnel, low quality facilities, low budget, etc. The 11th year plan document says that unlike developed countries, India does not have a geriatric healthcare service as a component of health services. Amenities like food and shelter for elderly face problems similar to pension systems, like identification of rightful beneficiaries, age identification, etc. In fact, the well-known Annapurna scheme is also having gaps. This table clearly shows that there is a continuous gap of almost 50% between allocation and offtake of the core food grains like rice and wheat. This is despite unmet demands in existence. Though there are various laws existing to protect the right of the elderly, the common men are hardly aware of them. And even if they are, it is not easy to get justice in time and with ease. Also, the more and more stricter laws like Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007 will not be of much help in any Indian society where parents, especially the mothers, are highly emotionally attached to their children. It's time for me to conclude with some suggestions on policy measures. It has been shown that children do not take care of their parents as they should be, and the laws don't work well to protect the rights of the elderly. So there is a need for a measure of incentives to the working class people. It is similar to the one-child policy of China. Individuals who take care of their older parents should be given some incentives like tax rebates, etc. So encouragement can be a better way instead of punishing. Elderly contribute mostly through self-employment to the economy, and hence they are not burden on the society. Steps should be taken to improve their working environment apart from providing better living conditions. Lastly, all the criticisms regarding the ongoing provisional schemes should be taken care of. I humbly thank you for listening to my presentation. I would love to have any comments, suggestions or queries on the same. My email ID is dbsinghania@gmail.com. Thank you.